There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thanks. Please be seated. Secretary. Is it the new one or the old one? Eh? The first item on the order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. Members, of course, you know that you will press the talk button on your desks if you wish to ask a supplementary question so that your name appears. The first question has been asked by the Honorable T. Makondo. The Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I thank you for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, the Freedom Charter, as well as the Constitution of our country, enjoins us as a nation and as a people to subscribe to the high values of our Constitution, and those values include principles of non-racialism, of equality, of embracing diversity and tolerance. If we are to build a truly non-racial society, then all South Africans, black and white, need to unite in ridding our country of the scourge of racial prejudice, discrimination, and intolerance. Because of our past, all of us do find that racism is deeply embedded in attitudes that a number of South Africans display, their beliefs and their behavior to one another. Racism is also at the heart of the economic disparities in our country, and in order to rid our country of racism and to build a non-racial society, we need to tackle with greater effort the dehumanizing and degrading racist attitudes, as well as to rid our country of hurtful and demeaning practices, while ensuring that the concept of equality gains meaning, particularly when it comes to economic and social opportunities for all South Africans. Since 1994, the ANC-led government has used its capacity and resources to work towards a united, democratic, non-racial and non-sexist South Africa. We have removed racist laws from the statute books of our country. We have passed and introduced legislation, and we have also allocated resources to de-racialize the economy and create an inclusive society. The Department of Arts and Culture, under the leadership of Minister Mthethwa, is leading efforts together with a number of role players to develop a comprehensive national action plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerant practices. If we are to be successful, we must acknowledge that racism in our country has its roots in a deliberate effort to keep black South Africans out of the mainstream of the economy. We must also accept that it was structured to deny black people the opportunity to run their own businesses, to prevent them from gaining skills, assets, and experience. It is therefore imperative, Madam Speaker, that we radically transform our economy to overcome poverty, inequality, as well as unemployment. Government has taken a number of concrete steps to ensure that we do rid our country of racism. And Madam Speaker, I think in doing all this, We need to be mobilizing the majority of people in our country, and also to remember the great lessons that we were taught by the icon of our country, Nelson Mandela, when he said, just as racism and hatred can be learned, we can also teach people to express acts of love, because love comes naturally to our people. And in order that we should do that, we must do precisely that and rid South Africa of racism and make South Africa racism free. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Makondo.
Thanks, Speaker. Deputy President, the Institution for Justice and Reconciliation pointed out in its 2015 Reconciliation Barometer that apartheid may no longer be in the statute books, but at the geography of our cities, towns, and distributional patterns of our economy is largely remain in place. What is it that government is going to do in the next 3 years to address racism and foster social cohesion, since economic disparities remain the center of the problem? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
The government has and continues to take a number of steps to address the historical imbalances of the past, and racism being at the center of all those imbalances. And to this end, the government has taken a number of steps to make sure that people who were mostly affected by racist practices and policies in the past their issues are addressed, both economically, socially, and otherwise. At an economic level, the government has made sure that it passes laws, as I was saying earlier, laws that are aimed at empowering our people. The Employment Equity Act has been passed. Enforcing our constitution is also another measure that government is seeking to take. But because racist practices are measures or acts that are practiced by individuals and institutions, we need all of us as South Africans to act together and not leave the task to government alone, to act together to rid our country of racism. And in this regard, business needs to play a role to make sure that provisions of the law like employment equity are actually promoted and implemented. We need at institutional level to promote social cohesion, to promote the principle of non-racism, to make sure that all our people embrace one another. Because as South Africans, we are basically not racist, but there are a few amongst us who still practice acts of racism. And it is when we act together as leaders, as institutions, as organizations, and indeed as political parties, that where we find racism within our own ranks, and a number of political parties, some of the parties sitting here in Parliament, still have people who are racist within their ranks. And we therefore need to act collectively to rid our institutions of racism. And where racists are found, we should act against them and take real hard measures against them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable van der Walt. Honorable van der Walt. Oh, here it says van der Walt. Is it the Honorable Van Dam?
I think it might be, Deputy Speaker. Deputy President, given that the Human Rights Commission has said that the most complaints of racism it has received are from Gauteng first and KwaZulu-Natal second, what are the governments in those provinces doing to tackle the scourge of racism? Given that in the Western Cape and the city of Cape Town, the mayor has launched a very successful inclusive city campaign, and in fact a second phase of that campaign was launched this week. So in those ANC-governed provinces where racism seems to be quite prevalent, what is government doing to tackle racism?
The Honorable Deputy President.
As Madam Speaker, as I was saying earlier, the task of ridding our country of racism should be a collective task. There should never be any form of competition that this one is doing better than the other one. I am less concerned about what each town or city or metro or province is doing. I'm more concerned about the collective action of all of us as South Africans, particularly as leaders. This is what we should be focusing on. And all of us must be united in this fight against racism. If we all accept, and we do, that racism is a scourge, and it was our racist past that led to the struggle that was led valiantly and successfully by the African National Congress, we should now all be joining hands collectively without competing with each other to rid our country of racism. And we should be urging, yes, Gauteng, yes, KwaZulu-Natal, yes, even the city of Cape Town, to take active steps on a continuous basis against racism. Wherever racist practices rear their ugly heads, we should take real firm action against those. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Reverend Mishwe.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy President, one of the most influential progressive Democrats this country ever produced was our former president, the late Mr. Nelson Mandela. He was known the world over as a man who was committed to peace, forgiveness, reconciliation, nation building, and non-racialism. And because of these values he upheld, he was trusted by people of different cultural and racial backgrounds. Why does the current government not set an example for the nation by boldly and aggressively pursuing the same values that Madiba promoted to make it easier for our nation to achieve social cohesion and non-racialism? And why does government still include racial classification in some of its official documentation if it truly seeks to promote non-racial society? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
What I can say is that if you were to find a group of people who are following in Nelson Mandela's footsteps, you will find them on this side of this house. And if you are to seek out government actions that have been taken to combat deviant behavior such as xenophobia, racism, you will find that our government has been leading in this process. When our country faced the ugly specter of attacks against foreign nationals classified as xenophobia, it was government and government leaders in the main who took to the road, who took to the streets of our country to urge our people to embrace the ideals that Nelson Mandela stood for. And similarly, when it comes to racism, it is the leadership that is largely sitting here that has been preaching and harping on the issues of embracing the values that are enshrined in our Constitution. And those values include non-racism and non-sexism. And it is not correct. It is not correct that our government uses racial classification. We do not use racial classification because that would go against the grain of what we believe in. And we believe in non-racism, and this is precisely what we are leading this country in. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Because the next honorable member on the list is not in the House, I pass on to Honorable Kubisa, NFP.
Madam Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, tertiary institutions should be the breeding ground for social cohesion and also schools at the same time. There have been reports of incident of racism at institutions of higher learning, especially the University of Stellenbosch and Northwest University. And there have been reports of students being subjected to racism, which entailed separate transport for black students, separate accommodation, separate halls, segregation with regard to the mode of instruction, and racial utterances directed to black students in particular, which I believe do not augur well for social cohesion. Now, how far has the intervention of the government gone with regard to ensuring that this kind of racism comes to a stop? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
We are aware of some of these ugly acts that are continuing to sprout around our country. And a number of ministers, members of the executive, have been taking quite a number of steps. The Minister of Arts and Culture, for instance, has embarked on a major campaign to combat racism, to get our country to embrace social cohesion, and he is involved in a process where a number of role players are being brought together and in discussion groups, in debates, and a number of other interventions. And this is all going to culminate in a major manifestation of a conference or discussion or forum that he is going to be leading in no time. And all this is going to involve a number of role players, yes, Honorable Member, including some of those people who are involved in some of the institutions of higher learning. We are aware that in those institutions there are also a number of acts that are being taken, number of interventions rather, that are leading towards dampening the flames of racism, hatred, and intolerance. And it is to this end that we want to continue spreading the word of social cohesion, embracing one another, and acting in terms of the principles that we all signed up to in our Constitution. This we are doing on an ongoing basis, and the invitation goes out again to all leaders in South Africa to continue to walk in the footsteps of the icon of our nation, Nelson Mandela, in promoting non-racialism, tolerance, and nation building as we embrace the social cohesion concept. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The next question, question number 2, has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, the central challenge facing South Africa today is the achievement of faster economic growth, greater job creation, and the reduction of poverty and inequality. Our state-owned enterprises have a critical role to play as catalysts and also as drivers of investment, growth, and employment. Many of our SOEs are well placed to perform this role and indeed are doing so. However, some SOEs are facing operational and financial challenges or some level of instability or lack of proper governance as well as managerial weakness. Others are struggling to remain profitable in very difficult and challenging trading circumstances. Working together with various ministries and stakeholders, the Interministerial Committee I've been asked to chair is seized with the task of strengthening the economic, social, and development role of these SOEs. The IMC is overseeing the implementation of the recommendations of the Presidential Review Commission, the PRC, in a phased manner, focusing on the immediate term on stabilization and consolidating a number of these SOEs. One of the 31 recommendations of the PRC report calls for the rationalization of the state's holding by focusing on those SOEs that provide public goods and those that are strategic to the economy of our country. Work is underway within the IMC to ensure that this process is guided by very clear frameworks and credible evidence, and most of all, our national interest. As President Zuma indicated in his State of the Nation address, This process, Madam Speaker, involves streamlining and sharpening the mandates of SOEs, rationalizing them where there is an overlap of mandates, and phasing out those state-owned enterprises that are no longer relevant to our nation's development agenda. In some instances, this will involve strengthening SOEs through consolidation, such as what is being contemplated now as a merger between SAA as well as SA Express. In others, it could involve the inclusion of minority equity players, leaving the majority equity play to government. The IMC is attending to this work as a matter of priority, understanding that the demands of strengthening these SOEs needs to be transparent, it needs to be broad in terms of consultation. And Madam Speaker, government remains confident that these interventions will lead to streamlining our SOEs, strengthening them, and making them to play a key role in the economy of our country. All we need to do is to have time, and of course time is not on our side, and we are working as urgently as possible to make sure that we reset these SOEs in the way that the NDP has outlined. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Maimane.
Madam Deputy President, and thank you, Speaker. Given the announcement by Minister Gordhan in his budget speech regarding the partial sale of SAA, can we in fact expect the shift in approach towards the partial or full privatization of all state-owned enterprises that are in the same or similar financial positions of that of SAA? And secondly, Deputy President, will the Deputy President also commit to this House that employees of the state-owned enterprises and ordinary South Africans will be in fact able to purchase shares in those state-owned entities? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
I think if anyone listened to the Minister carefully, he would have heard the Minister say, following on what the President said, that those state-owned enterprises that are no longer relevant will be phased out. And in the case of SAA, we are looking at an option of merging SAA together with SA Express. And all other matters in relation to these and other state-owned enterprises, there's still a matter of discussion and debate within the IMC, whereafter the IMC's recommendations will then be sent to Cabinet, and Honorable Maimane, you will be like all other members, you will get to know precisely what will have been decided. Please do not run ahead of yourself, because all those matters are still going to be discussed. And the Minister also said there will be situations where we will be looking for further capital injection. And that capital injection could come in a variety of forms, including coming either from the private sector or from a number of DFIs as well. So we are going to be looking at a range of measures that can be taken to reposition these SOEs. All I can assure Honorable Maimane on is that, yes, we are going to take due care of the position and the interests of workers in all our state-owned enterprises. The key amongst them is going to be their employment rights are going to be protected, even as we do the realignment, the restructuring, and everything else. So please don't run ahead of yourself. Just be patient until we come with a proper announcement. Thank you.
The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, it is common knowledge that South African Airways especially is not viable. It's costing taxpayers vast sums of money. Now, Deputy President, we have changed boards in the past, we have changed CEOs, and the problem persists. Is it possible that we could put South African Airways under management, and I mean outside management, to nurse South African Airways and bring it into a profitable and viable entity? Thank you, Mr.
Honorable Deputy President.
One of the measures and interventions that are being looked at in the IMC is precisely the issue of how we can reposition these SOEs in relation to their governance, to their management, to their profitability, and to creating a conducive environment for them to operate profitably and successfully. Now, the issue of management clearly is one that is being looked at continuously, and there are a number of proposals that we are looking at how best we can reposition SAA, particularly when it comes to management, when it comes to governance, the board for that matter. So all that is being looked at very, very closely, and the IMC will be making pointed recommendations to Cabinet, and Cabinet will then be able to come up with decisions on all those matters, including its own financial viability and including looking at issues such as the guarantees that government has been pouring into or behind SAA. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Haula.
Thanks, Chair. Deputy President, historical evidence demonstrates that both Western and Asian industrialization only became possible through state-led intervention, of which state-owned entities were the center of rapid growth. Even in countries that continue to grow despite challenging international economic conditions, evidence shows that it is mainly due to public investment, infrastructure through state-owned entities. Why is South Africa privatizing state-owned entities the only hope for industrialization if it is managed properly? How is South Africa going to industrialize in the absence of state-owned entities and private sector investment? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, I'm not aware of the government privatizing any publicly owned entity. I think the honorable member needs to pay attention to what the President said. And he said, and I repeat, those state-owned enterprises that are no longer relevant, underlined relevant, will be phased out. Now, that could mean a variety of things. It could mean that they will be merged with others, they will be repositioned, and that is precisely what the IMC is looking at. We're looking at a number of options, and those options are going to be looked at so closely, and we will come up with solutions that are going to be good for South Africa and for our economy. For we look at state-owned enterprises, a number of them in fact play that role as catalysts for economic growth, and some of them are key drivers to the growth of our economy. They are positioned in key sectors of our economy that are propelling the growth of our economy on a continuous basis. So our position as a government is very clear on our state-owned enterprises. We want to reposition state-owned enterprises, and those that are no longer relevant are going to be looked at again, and we will realign them, and where necessary, they will be phased out. That is our position.
The Honorable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Deputy President Limaseari. The Honorable President, in his most recent State of the Nation address, considered that for our state-owned companies to be successfully contribute to the National Development Plan, they would have to be not only financially sound, but also properly governed and managed. And additionally, that those state-owned companies no longer relevant to the country's developmental agenda would be phased out. Would the Honorable Deputy President state how many of our state-owned companies presently meet these requirements? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Dimasia Riabudi. Madam Speaker, that is a very good and relevant question, but I'm afraid I have to say that as the IMC proceeds with its work, as the IMC properly analyzes and dissects the recommendations of the Presidential Review Committee that was set up by the President on state-owned enterprises, it will come up with a list of those state-owned enterprises that fall in the category that Honorable Nkomo is talking about. As of now, it will be really putting the horse before the cart if one were to outline some of those. There are quite a number of state-owned enterprises. We've got about 700 or so of them. And a number of them operate in very key sectors of our economy, and some operate at much more lesser sectors of our economy. And we will be looking at all of them in terms of their performance, in terms of their profitability, and in terms of the needs that they have. And as we streamline all of them, we will be able to have clearer answers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, we come to question number 3, asked by the Honorable Shibambu to the Deputy President, but the follow-up question will be taken by the Honorable Hlophe, I'm advised. Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, we have not received any indication from anywhere, and indeed from NEDLEC as well, the constituencies that compose NEDLEC, that the government is frustrating progress on the implementation of the national minimum wage. Firstly, we don't have a national minimum wage, so we can't be found guilty for not implementing a non-existent minimum wage. And representatives of labor, business and community sector have had ample opportunity to raise concerns, and to this day they have not raised any with either the Minister of Labor or indeed myself, as I've been given the responsibility to lead this process. Since November last year, I have convened 3 meetings of the Committee of Principals. I've held 2 rounds of bilateral meetings with each of the constituencies themselves, and none of these have ever raised the type of complaint that is being articulated now. Where concerns have been raised, they have been addressed. As indicated by the President in the State of the Nation address, deliberations are currently underway. As we speak, people are meeting now, and they are now talking at a more advanced stage on the level of the minimum wage. That is where it should be said. These deliberations, Madam Speaker, are both complex and quite crucial. A number of other countries have taken much longer to arrive at a level of a minimum wage. Germany took more than 11 years. Brazil took a number of years as well. So did the UK. And we are just in the 18-month period. And we are working frantically to try and reach agreement on a level. And the minimum wage needs to be set at a level that makes a meaningful difference in the lives of the lowest paid workers in our country, while ensuring that there is economic growth and job creation that should be sustained. Madam Speaker, there is general agreement that the level agreed upon should be based on the best available evidence. All social partners have committed themselves to complete these deliberations without any delay, and it is to this end that people are working frantically to arrive at a level. The minimum wage negotiations are going ahead. They have agreed that this process requires careful management and execution. And a number of experts are advising the process. They are deeply involved in helping us to come up with solutions that will create a minimum wage that will be broadly acceptable. And progress is being made, and in the coming months, will be making significant announcements in this regard. And in this regard, Madam Speaker, there have been no delays that have been caused by government. And in fact, government is cooperating very well with all parties involved in this process. Thank you.
Honorable Hlophe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, the person who accused you was the member of COSATU, and the symposium took place on the 2nd and 3rd of February. I'm sure the records are there for you to check. My follow-up question here is that there's no argument that introducing national minimum wage will definitely assist in addressing inequality and also lead to South Africa's industrialization, since majority of workers' purchasing power will increase, therefore leading to high consumption and incentive necessary for industrial economy. When can Parliament expect the introduction of the national minimum wage bill, Deputy President? Because the process cannot be indefinite. Which side are you on? Unabasebenzi no muhamba no suma business. Which side?
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, answering the key substance of the question, when can we expect this process to be concluded? And I would urge that honorable member should listen more carefully to what is being said here. Because if she heard me properly, she will have heard me say, progress is being made. She will also have heard me say, other countries have taken up to 11 years. And we have just been in this for 18 months. And progress is being made. And now we are making progress on the level of the minimum wage. The level has been put forward that both parties would desire, and we are urging more and more towards each other. Now, all of us should be supportive of this process, because this process, which involves community representatives, 3 trade union federations, business in its various formations in terms of its own chambers and federations, and government. Various government departments are also involved in these discussions and negotiations. Now, this is about the best that you can have in terms of negotiation and consultation. Clearly, everyone does not expect that the level is going to be set by one party. We expect that there will be consensus, and we are moving towards consensus. The parties themselves, as structured in the various task teams, as well as structured in the Committee of Principals. And she wants to know when that is going to happen, because we cannot wait forever and ever. The process, when it comes to an end, I can promise her she will be amongst the first to know. So she will know when it is concluded. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Honorable Filtane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Deputy President, South Africa is unique and has its own unique circumstances and challenges. So I would suggest that perhaps we shouldn't be comparing ourselves that much directly with other countries. Currently, exploitation of some employees by employers is taking place. Given that minimum wages provide capital for business and therefore boosting the economy, why not try to finalize this matter urgently as a transitional measure? Maybe you could say this is the minimum wage for the next 5 years, and thereafter you continue with you finalize the real minimum wage. It's a question/suggestion. Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
That, Madam Speaker, is a refreshing suggestion. And indeed, 1 or 2 of the participants has flighted that type of suggestion, that you could look at the process of implementing the minimum wage in certain time frames. And I take it for what it is, that indeed what we should seek to do is to look at various suggestions and proposals. And the question has been asked, on which side should one be? We are on the side of making sure that we have a minimum wage that is going to reduce inequality in our country. That is the principal issue. And the good thing is that all parties that are involved in these discussions have realized that in order to reduce inequality in our country, we've got to have a minimum wage that is going to begin the process of addressing inequality in our country. Now, that is the side that all of us should be on, that we want a minimum wage that is going to be meaningful, but also a minimum wage that is going to promote more and more job creation as we move on, because it is possible to set a minimum wage at a level where it can encourage manufacturing to start booming, where it can encourage our people to become meaningful consumers in the economy of their country as they earn a little bit more and much more than what they are earning right now. So that should be the objective of a minimum wage. And I invite all of us to be on the side of that type of minimum wage to promote job creation as well as to reduce inequality in our country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Orlis.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy President, the national minimum wage is an important issue that we shouldn't engage in cheap political point scoring on, because it really is an important issue for all South Africans. And this House obviously must think of business, it must think of labor, it must think of the impacts on the economy. When the national minimum wage was introduced in Germany, in Britain, and in Brazil, those economies were thriving, between 3 and 5% economic growth. South Africa is currently not thriving. We're at 0.9% economic growth, and we might have to revise it down. Would the Deputy President give this House the assurance that government will not implement a national minimum wage during such a time when, as we've seen recently, small knocks to the economy can have a devastating effect on our economy? Would you give us that assurance?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
I can give the Honorable Member the assurance that all parties that are involved in the discussions on the minimum wage are acutely aware of the current status of our economy. They are equally acutely aware that the level of inequality in our country is the worst possibly in the world. And they, therefore, are charging ahead with the institution or agreement on the minimum wage, knowing fully well what the implications could well be. And one of those implications could well lead to an injection of growth in our economy. Because as people earn more than what they are earning now, they become better consumers. That could fuel manufacturing and the demand for goods and services. So one needs to look at what the impact of a minimum wage could well be from that perspective as well. We should not only look at it from one perspective, which is a negative perspective. And I choose to look at the institution of a minimum wage from a very positive perspective, that it is a development that our country sorely needs, and it needs it now. It needs it now, even as our economy is struggling, because the level of demand that could be fueled by people who now have extra cash in their hands could be quite phenomenal. And we should embrace that and should not be afraid of that. Now, Brazil, for instance, instituted a minimum wage when their level of inequality was possibly the worst in the world. And when they instituted a minimum wage, they were able to see their economy growing because Brazilians started becoming meaningful consumers of the goods and services that were being produced in Brazil. So let us not be afraid of embracing the concept of a minimum wage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, once a national minimum wage has finally been agreed upon and implemented, will monthly pensions be adjusted to this rate? If not, why not?
The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, I see no reason why monthly pensions should be adjusted, because the minimum wage will be for wage earners. It will be for people who are employed, currently employed, and for more people who will be employed in time. So I see no negative impact on the pensions that our people are earning, and I see only a positive in terms of a minimum wage being put in place and people beginning to earn more. Yes, it may well have an impact on some of our businesses, and it is in this regard, or sectors of the economy, and it is in this regard that an issue such as exemptions is going to be looked at. So when the minimum wage is finally introduced, it will be a package of measures. Measures that will include exemptions, measures that will include who will set the minimum wage, when will it be set, what the impact of inflation or CPI is going to be on the minimum wage. So we're looking at a process that could be lifting to all South Africans and indeed to businesses as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We now come to question number 4, asked by the Honorable Kubai. The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, there is new leadership in place at the South African Post Office. A new board has been appointed, and this board is comprised of people with the requisite skills and experience to oversee the implementation of a turnaround, and also to implement the turnaround of an entity that we are seeking to modernize. Key executive management positions, including the Chief Executive Officer, have now been filled. The CFO position is also about to be filled. In 2015, a strategic turnaround plan was put in place to improve the performance at the post office. The company has been successful in reducing costs, but less successful in boosting its own revenues. Taking this experience into account, the company has reviewed and refined its own turnaround strategy to ensure that a business model suited to the changing postal service environment is put in place. It is envisaged that the company's financial performance will improve and that it will also stabilize over the next financial year. The relevant ministers are working together to find workable solutions to address the post office's funding challenges. The Minister of Communications and the Minister of Post and Telecommunications, rather, as well as the Minister of Finance, are deeply involved in finding solutions for the challenges that the post office faces. And in this regard, Madam Speaker, members may recall that when the Minister of Finance announced his budget, 650 million was allocated to the post office as part of the 2016-17 MTEF allocation. The company is currently in the process of raising the funding it requires to pay outstanding debtors and meet its liquidity requirements, whilst at the same time executing its own turnaround plan. The Interministerial Committee on State-Owned Enterprises, working together with the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services and National Treasury, will continue to monitor the implementation of this plan. Madam Speaker, the Post Office has great potential to be a leading, innovative, and profitable state-owned enterprise. It is one entity that has a network and a footprint that is the envy of a number of institutions that deliver services to our people. It has 2,500 postal outlets countrywide. Now, many banks would kill to have networks such as this, and the post office has that. And we need to give it the opportunity and the space so that it can find its feet and its grounding. And I have no doubt with the management that is in place now and the board that is in place that we will be able to see the post office thriving in just a few years from now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Kubai.
Ke leboge Motlatšamopresidente. Ke rata go leboga tlhaloso e filego ke Motlatšamopresidente gobane se re se bonago ka ra post office or ka ra company ya rena ya diposo e bontšha gore re bona phetogo e ntšhi sa le babea poto le CEO o leng gona. Gagolo ke rata go kwiša Motlatšamopresidente gore e ka ba go a kgonagala na gore poso ya rena mo South Africa Borwa e ka bereka gape le mafatsheng a ka ntle e seng fela ka ra South Africa gore e tlo kgona go oketša kgwebo ya bona especially ka gare ga e-business. Ke a leboga.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, once the post office repositions itself, and once the post office continues to implement its turnaround strategy, I have no doubt that it is the type of post office that will be properly modernized, that will have embraced and implemented innovation to the hilt, and it is a post office that should be able to even find hunting ground in a number of other countries, particularly in our region and indeed on the continent. The post office is well endowed with a number of really good and positive resources. And it has an infrastructure that is the envy of many other institutions. And I'm sure that with the partnerships that the post office can form, it will be able to operate most profitably. And as it, spreads its wings beyond even our borders, if its strategic plan could lead it in that direction, it will be able to find profit and success in a number of other markets. We need to give the post office a chance and a great opportunity. The post office is a great asset to this nation, and let us give it that opportunity to thrive.
The Honorable Van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and to you, Honourable Deputy President. I agree the new leadership at SAPO is welcomed, and I think the new CEO has shown a lot of vision and he seemed to be a very courageous man. But, Honourable Deputy President, the fact of the matter is, at this moment, the post office is not a viable concern. It is bankrupt, it is not a money-making SOE. And the fact of the matter is the odds are stacked up against the new CEO, simply because in an internet era, postal services are largely redundant, and also the postal services have lost a number of key clients, and we can cite a number of examples, but most people are now using courier services. So my question to you, Deputy President, is it not too late to save the post office? And secondly, do you have plans in place to re-attract or regain key clients? Because if not, then this turnaround strategy will just be another futile exercise. And I think, Honourable Deputy President, you will agree with me that we can't continue to ask taxpayers to bail out the post office, and the CEO is on record now asking another $3 billion just to keep the post office afloat. I thank you.
The Honourable, the Deputy President.
Honourable Speaker, it is not too late. It is not too late. The CEO has come forward with a clear vision, and he's armed with a good turnaround strategic plan, but he's also armed with a very keen board and a management team. And he's now involved in a process which the Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services can outline in due course, where he is going around to, yes, the clients that the post office had and has at the moment, and reassuring them that the post office is back in business, and it is a post office that wants to operate efficiently, profitably, and in a way that is going to lead to giving good services to all its clients. Now, he is on that journey, and I'd like to say that let's give him and his management team, and indeed the board, the opportunity to implement their strategic plan. Yes, they require quite a bit of capital, and they have now been given an injection of 650 million rand, and they should be able to utilize part of the guarantee that they had not fully utilized to raise more capital, and he's now involved in a process of talking to funding institutions, because funding institutions respond to a good management that is in place, and if they have confidence that the management that is in place has a very good strategic plan, they will be able to give funding because they also want to make money. Now, this is a post office that is going to turn around the corner, and let's give it an opportunity. And we are also guided by what is happening in other regimes. The Japanese post office has just gone public. Now, we can put Japan up there on the poster wall and say, is this where we want to go? Yes, it could well be where we want to go to grow the post office, and I have no doubt that we will find good comparators in terms of what we want to do and in terms of the partnerships that we must form in order to inject more life into the post office. I think we will get there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Speaker. When the then Administrator and now SAPO Board Chairman, Dr. Simo Lushaba, it's nice work if you can get it, tabled yet another SAPO turnaround plan before Parliament last year, he forecasted a 1.2 billion rand loss for the year ended March 2015 and a loss of 230 million rand this financial year. After, he said the SAPO would deliver a massive 1.2 billion rand profit in 2017. Well, SAPO actually lost 1.5 billion rand last year, Deputy President, with a qualified audit, and is on track to post a loss for this financial year of more than 1 billion rand. Given that the SAPO's costs far exceed its revenue, and we are understandably concerned that the latest 650 million rand bailout isn't used to fund the 100 million rand a month revenue shortfall, will the Deputy President put the taxpayers' money where his mouth is and guarantee that this is the last bailout that the SAPO will receive to fund its grossly mismanaged, corruption-riddled, loss-making enterprise? Thank you, Speaker.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
What I can say, Honorable Speaker, is that the management and indeed the board of the Post Office are looking forward to a future where they will no longer come to the fiscus to ask for guarantees or for money. Now, they have set their objectives on that goal. And with that, they are now beginning to implement a process through which they will be able to help us achieve that goal. Yes, they are loss-making at the moment, and their cost structure is rather high. And they are now beginning to realign some of their operations and looking at things like their property portfolio. Their property portfolio is, amongst other cost measures or cost items, that is actually bringing their profitability down. Now, they are looking at it very closely, and I'm sure that they will be able to come up with good solutions. Now, the one other thing we should credit the new management team on is that they have been able to establish really good and positive working relationships with the unions. Now, together with the unions, they have decided that they are going to work together to reposition the post office. And let us give them that opportunity. And they are going to be able to do this without much loss of work or of jobs. Now, this is a post office that is on the road or on a journey to something that we will find admirable in the future. Let us give them that opportunity. And let me say, rather than be negative, rather than rubbish the post office and indeed other state-owned enterprises, let us give them the opportunity and let us wish them well on this journey, because they are now taking meaningful steps to make sure that we reposition our post office. And we did say so when we spoke in this parliament about ESCOM. And everybody on the other side was jeering and laughing and dismissing the measures that we were saying are going to be taken to reposition ESCOM. Today, ESCOM is being repositioned, is better than what it was. And let us give these state-owned enterprises. Now, we are we are determined to make sure that our state-owned enterprises work efficiently and profitably. It is no joy to many of us, to all of us, that they continue coming to the fiscus. But we must support them rather than throw them down the drain. Let us support them so that they are repositioned and they regain the status that they had in the past, where they pay dividends to this country and to this nation. Give them a chance. Don't rubbish them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Sope.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, the recently completed investigation by the Public Protector asked the board of the South African Post Office to recover over 22 million in fraudulent rental agreements. What are you doing to make sure that they not only recover the money, but that all those implicated face the full might of the law?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, we are pleased that a report of this nature has come to the fore, and it was at the instance of one of the trade unions in the post office. And now that the report is on the table, it is being examined, and what we can say is that there are going to be consequences flowing from this report. Yes, the money that has been lost or misspent or recklessly spent is going to be recovered, and those that are responsible for all this will be taken to book. So on this one, we are absolutely certain of what needs to be done. We want to clean processes and make sure that as we reposition the post office, it operates with proper corporate governance processes and it adheres to all the rules that are in place in the company. So we will be taking action because the report has now come out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That concludes questions to the Deputy President. I thank the Honorable, the Deputy President. The next item on the order paper is questions addressed to ministers in the economics cluster. Question number 15 has been asked by the Honorable D.Z. Ranto to the Minister of Public Enterprises.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I have quite a lengthy response, and I will cherry pick it and then hand the document to the member. The Department of Public Enterprises, state-owned companies, they are 6, and they play quite a critical role in the development of scarce and critical skills. Over the past 5 years, since the signing off of the National Skills Accord in 2011, the state-owned companies have enrolled and trained 25,484 people in various core, scarce, and critical skills interventions. These include 8,034 artisan trainees, 2,915 technician trainees, 2,273 engineering trainees, 184 cadet pilots, as well as 12,078 trainees in other core sector-specific training interventions. And then, of course, the 2,457 graduates and matriculants benefiting through the ESCOM Strategic Youth Development Initiative. For 2015-16 financial year, SOX collectively signed a shareholder compact with me to enroll 7,974 trainees, which would include 2,301 artisan trainees, 311 technician trainees, 271 engineering trainees, 5 cadet pilots, and 2,086 trainees registered in various sector-specific training programs. This number also includes 1,500 matriculants registered in artisan skills and another 1,500 graduates work placements registered through the ESCOM Strategic Youth Development Initiative Program. We have an agreement with the Department of Higher Education and Training, so 3 of the state-owned companies collectively receive National Skills Fund funding support totaling 430 million for the optimization of their training facilities to train for the national pool as indicated below. Transnet received 175 million to train 1,000 artisan trainees trained in 6 of the Transnet engineering academies, and these are currently in their final year of training. Eskom received NSF funding for 174 million to train 1,250 artisans, each in the different, or training in 4 different Eskom training facilities. And then Denel received 57 million to train 297 artisan trainees. In terms of maths and science support, this is from our corporate social investment. SOX also invests in education-related programs, such as which are geared towards maths and science, focusing support on mostly disadvantaged, underperforming, and under-resourced schools and learners. And if we did not have these state-owned companies within our portfolio, we would not have spent 500 million rand on children whose parents can't afford to give them this training. So the 6 state-owned companies in the portfolio contribute 500 million to education initiatives through their CSI spend through 17 programs countrywide. There are also other investments, Madam Speaker, investments in school infrastructure. In fact, it takes 2 weeks to build a timber frame structure for 400 pupils. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Before I call on Honorable Ranto for the supplementary question, let's just remind ourselves that in answering the question, the ministers are given 3 minutes and 2 minutes for supplementary question, and the follow-up questions by members is 1 minute. Thank you. Honorable Ranto.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your comprehensive answer. But Minister, we have learners that are in the most rural areas of our provinces that cannot access the opportunities because of the areas where they live in. How then do you make it sure that they get equal rights to the opportunities in their own country like those living in urban areas? We have learners in places like KwaNomlengane, in Sterkspruit. How are they going to get those opportunities, to get to know of all the opportunities that are there? Thank you, Minister.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. In fact, what I should have said is that many of the Eskom training facilities and transit facilities, whilst they are in the city centers, they are also in far rural areas. Lephalale, for example, where Medupi Power Station is, and the training facilities in the area has been built in order to help students. The same applies for Emala Kleni from where Kusili Power Station is, or Maluti Pufong, where Ingula is, and then of course in the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan. But let me also just make a point, Honourable Member. We have a program called Telematics, and it is a program for between grades 10 and 12. It is set up at the University of Stellenbosch, and it brings the best tutors to tutor in specifically maths and science, and it goes to very far-flung areas. Look, we haven't reached all the far-flung areas. We haven't reached Rietpoort, for example, in the Western Cape, which is probably the poorest community within the Western Cape, and nobody's actually reached them except for social development and basic education. So we are rolling them out slowly. at all those schools across the country, they should be able to log in where we set up processes at one school in a community, and more than 1,500 students can have access to that, them. We've not done enough. We've done as much as we can, but as we go forward, that is where the focus is. We are state-owned companies, and it's the state-owned companies that have to particularly look out for children who have no opportunity within their communities. And that is the commitment of this department, especially for those who get to matric and then they don't know what else to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a follow-up question from Honorable Mazzoni, DA.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to Minister Brown. Minister Brown, one of the biggest problems that we experience with the state-owned entities is once we've trained people, and it must be said that the training programs that are offered are very good, that we seem to not be able to retain our trained workers because they're attracted by a private sector. Would you agree with me, Minister, that perhaps if we lowered the salaries of top managements in SOEs and paid more money to engineers and those workers that we've just skilled up, that maybe we would be able to retain more people that we train up? And also, Minister, the Deputy President referred to the interministerial committee that's been set up with regards to state-owned entities. Now, skills are terribly important. In that interministerial committee, are we making sure that people that are experts in the field are also going to be heading up our state-owned entities and not just political appointees in our state-owned entities?
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Mazzoni. I'm not sure what you mean when you asked whether we'll only appoint unskilled people to head up the state-owned companies. Because I really do feel we've appointed just the best to head up our state-owned companies. In fact, as we speak today, and I'm very pleased, Deputy President, by the end of this financial year, Eskom would have been able, just through greater efficiencies, including BPP, is they're able to actually make a profit of about 41 billion rand. So I think that's quite remarkable. I think it's also quite remarkable that a small area like like Mpumalanga and the Limpopo area, where SAFCOL operates in, that 20,000 rural families will not be able to survive without SAFCOL. And that's why I think the training programs we have not only for our state-owned companies, but we have training programs for the economy of this country, for the country. We won't be able to retain everyone within the program, but everyone has a right to be trained. And so, for me, we have not appointed anybody within any of the state-owned companies as CEOs who are not qualified for their positions. In fact, they are as qualified as anybody else running a large company. I'm not sure. Maybe the problem you have is another kind of problem and you're not telling me what that is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. The follow-up question will be from Honorable Sengwa, IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, you have alluded to the fact that money has come in from NSFAS to fund some of your programs. Now, given that NSFAS is cash-strapped as it is and does not even have enough money to meet the requirements of its mainstream programs, do you think it's fair that a state entity would take money from another state entity which is really struggling? Shouldn't that be part and parcel of the work that you are doing as a norm as opposed to an exception? Because you are contributing really to the betterment of education, because the challenges of NSFAS are vast and varied, and all of us in this house in South Africa knows. So in the context of that, is it fair whether can you then charge a lesser rate really from what you're getting from NSFAS to extend your programs in order for it to reach as many people as possible. And finally, the dispensation of your programs, the information, what advertising and information dispensation techniques are you using to make sure that you reach all the corners of South Africa? Thank you.
Honorable Minister. Thank you very much. If we use the NSFAS money for anything other than training, I will agree with you. But we are using the money in collaboration with Department of Higher Education and Training for a skills program. They come out of that program being fully qualified engineers, being fully qualified aviation experts, maritime engineers. That's what they actually come out as. So it's not as if the money has been taken out of the system and then given to ESCOM. It is a collaborative exercise. So they are still training at Wits University or at the University of Strathclyde in England, Scotland. They're still training. So the program is just that it's a lot more focused on what skills we need within the state-owned companies and in specific areas like engineering, like maritime, aviation, and so forth. There's just an array of communication tools that we use. A lot of it we do quite locally, because in the areas where we have power stations, for example, or in the areas where you have Kuduspoort, we do a lot of it locally within the communities surrounding the areas. But much of it, and of course through social media and all other methods, I still, Chairperson, think that we can do better. We can continuously do better. But there are lots and lots of people who apply for the ESCOM, Transnet, SAFCOL programs, and we often can't accommodate them.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question is from Honorable Matthias, EFF.
Thanks, House Chair. Minister, I think your output levels on skills development are very low. You know why? It's because your state-owned enterprises are misaligned. For instance, DNL is under your department when it's supposed to be under Department of Defense. Now, the question I want to put to you is, would it not be appropriate if all state-owned enterprises under the Minister Department are placed elsewhere in appropriate departments, such as ESCOM to be under Energy and DNL under Defense? And wouldn't that save money by reducing one cabinet post and also collapsing so many multiple departments into one? That would be consistent with the belt tightening measures that the Minister of Finance has proposed.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
This is a completely new question, Chair, but I'm very happy to answer the question. This fits into the IMC. There we will decide whether we have a centralized system, a decentralized system, or a hybrid of the two systems. And that could make a decision that it either sits in the policy department, or it sits somewhere else, or it sits with state-owned companies. The honourable member, are you hearing me? He's looking everywhere else except looking at me. I know this is not an answer you'd like to hear today. The short answer is, try to win an election, and you can decide to do that right tomorrow.
Thank you, Minister. The next question will be question number 36, as asked by Honorable DJ Menir, GA, to the Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, thank you, and thanks to Mr. Mania for his question.
The response is as follows. South Africa's credit ratings are indeed constrained in the short term by low growth, as we said during the budget speech, sustainability of public finances, and the weakened financial health of SOCs, which have just been under discussion. Therefore, the 2016 budget highlights clear initiatives precisely aimed at mitigating these risks. The NDP, which has remained the center of the national budgets, continues to be the catalyst for growth, as is the 9-point plan. Recently, the President has tabled a report of the Presidential Review Commission on SOCs that outlines interventions aimed at addressing the issues in the SOCs. While the 2016 budget has been tabled under difficult economic conditions, the government's fiscal policy is one that sticks to the expenditure plan that we've outlined during the budget. So let me go through some of these factors. The first is that in the 2016 budget, we reflect government's commitment to fiscal consolidation and reining in public spending or government spending. The expenditure ceiling, as you know, was cut by 25 billion rands. Taxes will increase by 48 billion rands. And by 2018-19, our deficit should be at 2.4%. In relation to turnaround plans in respect of SOCs, some of which were under discussion, government is addressing the weakened financial health of some of the SOCs. Recently, the President, as I indicated, released the report of the Review Commission, and some of the guidelines that we will be using in the future through the committee chaired by the Deputy President will be that any capitalization of SOCs will be done in a fiscally neutral manner. In other words, it won't have a negative impact on our deficits and borrowing. Partial sale of equity stakes, minority stakes in some of the SOCs will be considered, as will co-investment ventures, as we have, for example, in the renewable energy instance. Both the development role and the commercial role, if you like, and objectives of SOCs will be clearly defined as we go forward. The attention will be given to governance, the choice of CEOs and skilled staff in the SOCs themselves to improve their performance. The mandates of SOCs will be subject to review in every 5 years. The performance of SOCs will be assessed on the basis of efficiency and effectiveness, as well as service delivery, and there are many other plans that we have. The other key element is to address low economic growth. Government is collaborating with the private sector, labor, and civil society to restore confidence in the economy and address the structural constraints to growth. Amongst the matters that we are looking at is maintaining public infrastructure investment. Over the medium term, government and SOCs have committed 865 billion rands for investment in housing, roads, rail, public transport, water, and electricity. Partnerships to expand co-investment in economic infrastructure, social facilities, and innovation and skills development will be initiated. Increasing electricity supply, which is a critical factor in our economy, and improving reliability by mobilizing the private sector co-investment in technologies that promise rapid results, and promote a stable and cooperative labor relations environment. Two other factors, Chairperson. One is my colleague, Minister Rob Davies, has just heard from the U.S. that their government has accepted finally the negotiated position on AGOA, and the constraints that were placed by the American president have now been removed. But the second factor is the role of political parties in this House in creating confidence in this economy and in this country, and differentiating between party political positions and contestations and the national interest, which I'm sure Mr. Mania will address when he asks the next question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I call on Honorable Mania, please assist me in your answering. 3 minutes. I know how important it is for us to get the answers, but let's try and stick to 3 minutes. Honorable Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaking of the national interest, the Minister will be aware that during the State of the Nation address, President Zuma stressed the need for everybody to work together to implement the turnaround plan to which he referred in order to beat the ratings downgrade. But the fact is we are not working together because a civil war has broken out, which was triggered by the Hawks' decision to investigate you for allegations relating to the so-called rogue spy unit. So will you therefore confirm that you believe the investigation is politically motivated, that you will not be responding to the 27 questions by close of business today, and that you have no intention of resigning, and that you have every intention of fighting on. Thank you.
Before you answer, Honorable Minister, I must say that this is the house where we ask questions on the question that has been posed, and it's nothing to go personal on the minister, but it is the prerogative of the minister to answer.
Yeah, I'm looking for the question, but anyway, melodrama is a forte of Mr. Mania, so we'll respond to what he says. Firstly, on the questions raised by the Hawks letter, there's a letter from my attorney which is in the public domain. Have a look at it, and I'm sure you'll be satisfied with what you see. I've been appointed by the President to do a piece of work in the national interest, and I intend to continue to do it. And thirdly, I invite you in the DA to work with me to prevent a downgrade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next follow-up question is from Honorable Nkomo, IFP.
Thank you very much. Is the Honorable Minister of Finance confident that the government is doing enough in respect of its reforms to improve the growth potential of our economy, as this is the key to avoiding further rating downgrades? Where is government falling short, and where can government do better? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
We can all certainly do better, Honorable Member and Chairperson, in creating the right kind of confidence in our economy. But we should also remember that we are living in very turbulent and very uncertain global environments. The G20 just met last Friday and Saturday in Shanghai, and I had a chance to look at a report from that meeting today. And they've come up with no plan, these top 20 economies of the world, on how do we get growth back onto track, how do we actually ensure that global aggregate demand is actually increased. And interestingly, the issue of business investment is a challenge globally, not just in South Africa as well. Is government aware? Yes, government is very aware, as you heard from Sona and the budget speech as well, that we can't just blame the global economy. We've got to take responsibility for our own economy. But secondly, what we also have to do is to ensure that we understand the role of the private sector, understand the role of government, and understand the role of the rest of society. Government is not the key determinant or only determinant of how do we get growth in this country. So we've set out the measures that we want to undertake to promote growth. Make sure we still have some levels of investment in infrastructure in our budget. Secondly, ensure that on the regulatory side for business, start decreasing the regulatory burden, particularly for small businesses, so that they can get down to work and get more businesses created. Thirdly, you're going to have a lot of jobs lost in the coming period, in the mining industry and elsewhere. We need to sit as a country together with other social partners and say, how do we both look after those that are going to lose their jobs, but secondly, prevent job losses where that is actually possible as well. Fourthly, find new areas of enterprise where employment can be created and growth can be generated. Tourism is one example. Agriculture still has huge potential in this country, and the Minister of Agriculture and I will be talking about that shortly as well. So there's lots to do, but the key on the soft side of this whole question, Honourable Member, is how do we create better confidence and trust amongst all of the social partners so we can generate growth on the one hand and seize the opportunities that are available to us, notwithstanding the difficult climate that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Mukausa, EFF, next supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, whether the covert political war between yourself and President Zuma is real, sensationalized or perceived by media, it's not important. What matters is that it's there and is our reality after what you referred as attempt to capture national treasury. Has the minister had a conversation verbally, face-to-face, with the SARS commissioner about the impact of what the minister referred to as unacceptable defiance of executive instruction, perceived war between two institutions, Treasury and SARS, and its impact on work being done to avoid ratings downgrade?
Honorable Minister.
I'm sure the honourable member knows there's a reply coming your way, honourable member. I'm sure the honourable member knows that all cabinet ministers and the deputy president serve at the president's pleasure. So how do you have a war with your employer? We talk every day, we work every day. I am still here, and the key is to ensure that we create the right climate, both on our side and your side, in order that we can say to the 55 million people in South Africa that all of us are working in their interest. As far as the Treasury is concerned, it's in very safe hands. Thank you very much. And the SARS Commissioner, remember what we want in South Africa, particularly in respect of fiscal institutions, are institutions that A, run on a clear legal basis, B, have integrity in the top management, C, are treating taxpayers in a professional kind of way, and D, running the institution so that we are able to sustain it for future generations. Institutions like tax and customs administrations or a treasury don't disappear depending on which government is in power. So whoever has ambitions to take over from the ANC, which is going to be an ambition that is going to be unsatisfied for a long time to come, will still need a treasury and will still need a SARS. Our job is to ensure that whoever is the incumbent in SARS understands what executive accountability means, and will certainly hope to resolve this in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The next question, when did this request come? They just came now. Mr. Lorimer, GA? I'm not sure whether it's for the next question because there was nothing on my screen. Is it for the next? Can I confirm with Honorable Lorimer? Thank you. Then we are done with question 36. The next question, question number 18, has been asked by Honorable Mandela to the Minister of Mineral Resources. The Honorable Minister?
No, thanks, Chairperson. Let me acknowledge the question by the Honorable Member, Mr. Mandela, and indicate that just before the signing of the declaration, around 16,000 jobs were to be shared. And after the signing of this declaration, because we are working together as the stakeholders that signed the declaration, the 16,000 jobs have not been shared up to so far because we are engaging and looking at other options as we have agreed in our 10-point plan. Through the collaboration with other stakeholders, about 3,900 direct jobs were saved in the gold sector, and further 3,031 jobs were also saved in the coal sector. The checklist used by the CCMA have been augmented with the requirements applicable to the mining industry relating to the management of downscaling. Capacity development workshops were offered to CMA facilitators handling large-scale retrenchments in mining to familiarize them with the mining regulatory framework in social and labor plans. The CCMA now invites the department to attend consultation processes held as part of the Section 189 process, together with other stakeholders, including affected employee organizations, and the DMR also invites CCMA to Section 52 processes to ensure that there is alignment. Implementation of this streamlining has commenced at Bakoni, Impala, and other mines, and stakeholders concur on the merits of this process. The collaboration with stakeholders in saving jobs has provided a platform for companies to extend the consultation period whilst other options are being explored. Mining companies continue to be urged to consider retrenchment as the last resort, which faced with economic challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Mandela.
Ndiyabulela sihlalo wendlu ebekekileyo. Kodwa mphathiswa, it is reported by the NUM on Monday that we stand to lose more than 36,000 jobs which are under threat over the next 3 months. And since the announcement, Anglo-American said it would be cutting up to 2,000 jobs in 2 of its mines. Is this correct? If so, what is DMR doing to save further job losses? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Let me indicate that the loss of jobs is a moving target. Earlier this year, when we announced the stats on fatalities, the CCMA stats were standing at 32,000 of the jobs that are facing threat. So that target will keep on moving. I'm sure we all know that. We are hard at work, together with other stakeholders, in ensuring that we implement the 10 points that were agreed as part of the declaration. Immediately after the mining in Daba, which we pleaded with investors to come to South Africa and ensure that they invest, to ensure that we create jobs and keeps our job, we were able to benefit, and as a result, companies from Japan came and visited South Africa, and we held talks that were very positive, and we are awaiting results thereof. We will continue to move and promote our minerals locally and abroad, in ensuring that we keep in line with what we have agreed with other stakeholders to save jobs and stabilize the mining industry and create further jobs.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next question, supplementary question, will be from Honorable Lorima, GA.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, nobody disputes that this is a worthy initiative, but it's a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It may stop the arterial spurting, but we're still going to continue to bleed jobs. What is required is a fundamental change in the way that the mining industry is run. So is this initiative the only thing that you will be doing to staunch the loss of jobs in this mining industry?
Honourable Minister.
Well, if you look at the declaration itself, it tackles what the stakeholders agrees upon as challenges that are facing the mining industry. And our belief is that standing together, tackling those challenges, we will be able to bring a game changer in the mining industry. One of the issues that were raised, for an example, is an issue of stability in terms of strikes and so forth. We are happy to mention that in the year 2015, we were able to stabilize the sector, and we all agreed that we achieved when it comes to those issues. We are dealing with the issues of costs that were also raised in the 10 points by the stakeholders, be it electricity and other issues, to ensure that we stabilize the sector. We continue to promote our minerals, as I've said, locally and abroad, to ensure that moving forward, we are able to deal with the challenges, and we are certain that we will, in time, be able to move forward.
Thank you. Next is Honorable Esther Hazen, IFP.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, as the Minister of Finance rightly pointed out, global financial strain affects a lot of industries, and maybe directly more so the mining industry. In terms of the Minister, in terms of the primary objective of this industry commitment to save jobs in mining, excuse me, can you advise how many interventions have since the conclusion of the agreement been identified and being attended to by the stakeholders? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Our team is intervening on a regular basis in terms of saving jobs. As I've indicated, the fact that we're able to save 3,900 jobs, it is because our team went and intervened in Doornkop and talked to Harmony Mine. As a result of that intervention, those jobs were saved. Our team was also involved in Zululand, where Rio Tinto was about to follow the route of ensuring that they place their company into business rescue. But due to our intervention, 3,031 jobs were saved. So we continue in that trend to ensure that where we need to intervene or facilitate, we do exactly that in the interest of saving.